Steve Krah, what do you think about that? That was Andrew Wiggins. I posted online the other day, is there anything this guy can't do? He's projected in the top 100 for the draft this year. We're talking about the Heritage Christian Senior. I stole that from their Twitter page this week, and I had to put it on here because that was just fantastic.
Pre-game, do the anthem in game. He's going to entertain with his baseball talents, and maybe he has a post-game concert, so he can do it all.
I think he's sweeping the floors when they're done. He's just taking care of business. Folks, welcome back to episode 2 of our sophomore year of This Week in Baseball across Indiana. Let's get right to it with this week's BAI Top 5. The topic this week, and Steve and I talked about these offline before we got started. Some of these are absolutely crazy because that's the topic, the top 5 craziest baseball state records, the IHSAA, and I about said IHSBCA, IHSAA top 5 craziest baseball state records. Here we go. Number 5, and it's by Brandon Bowles of Taylor from 1998 to 2000. What are we talking about? 52 game hitting streak. And that's only number 5. What can get more crazy than that? Let's look at number 4. And the value is 59. 59. It was by Evansville Memorial from 1978 to 1979. What IHSAA record is that? That is most consecutive wins. Evansville Memorial, 1978 to 79. Steve, was that Mattingly's? Or is he Central?
Mattingly era.
That was Mattingly. Yeah, a guy named Don Mattingly played for that in that time. So not a big surprise there. Number 3, the value is only 7, and it was this state record was done twice. Once by my alma mater, but I wasn't a part of it, unfortunately. My alma mater, South Vermilion, did it in 1987. Also by Twin Lakes in 2000. Was that who was that era? Who was coaching there in 2000 at Twin Lakes? Was that Jake?
Oh, that's long before him.
Was that before him? Okay. The value is 7. What record are we talking about? Most team home runs in 1 inning. Funny part of that, Steve and I were talking before offline, and I said 7 team home runs in 1 inning. He said 17.
He said 17. I said that can't.
17 home runs in 1 inning.
I would have heard about that. You would have thought.
Check your math there, HatGuy. 7 team home runs in 1 inning. It was done twice. That's only record number 3 in our list of top 5 craziest baseball state records. What's number 2? The value is 22, and it was by Peru versus Logansport in 1971. Of course, we're talking about the longest game in the history of IHSAA records. That's where this comes from. These come from the official IHSAA record book, and their latest version. That was the longest game back in 1971, 22 innings. What is number 1? What can beat all these? The value is only 6. And maybe the craziest part is this was done twice by Bob Squires of DeKalb in 1982 and David Richards of Elwood in 2009. Six what? 6 consecutive at-bat home runs. That is absolutely crazy. That is this week's BAI Top 5. That brings us up to our next weekly segment, and that is the Captain's College Roundup. Of course, I call Steve Krah the captain. Like I said in week 1, he's the brains of the outfit. I'm just the mouth. Steve-O, tell us a little bit about the college scene last week, and maybe some thoughts on what's coming up next week.
Well, the D3 schools got into the act this week, and so Wabash is 4-2, so that's the best record in the D3 teams. But Oakland City They're 15-1.
Wow.
They're on, yeah, 15-1. They're on a 7-game streak. Now they had a good year last year. They won 31 games, but you figure they're almost halfway to that total already. Yeah, 30. Uh, and Indy is 6-0. They had another sweep. So they're off to a hot start on the D2 side of things.
I was looking here. I couldn't remember who is the coach now at Oakland City. Now, is
That's
it
Andy Lasher.
Andy? Okay, yeah.
A little bit about, I think we might have mentioned this last week. I can't remember, but Oakland City is soon going to play all its the rest of the season. Maybe it'll be this next month at League Stadium in Huntingburg.
Yep, they're going to share time
They're they're
between.
they're 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 really upgrading at Oakland City, but that construction is underway, so they got to
Why would you want to be in
go
a
through.
hurry if you're playing your games at League Stadium? That's of course, League State. For the people that aren't familiar, League Stadium is obviously down there in Du Bois County. It's home of the DC Bombers, the Du Bois County
Right, Andy
Bombers.
Lasher's been involved
Yep.
with coaching that team, and he's, a lot of those guys had either played for Southridge or played in that
Well,
stadium before.
and
So I'm sure
Southridge, yeah,
they love it.
Southridge plays their home games there too. Um,
That's right. They're just down the
and of
road.
course,
Well,
home to the
they're
Rockford
Huntingburg
Peaches.
too.
Yeah, everybody knows the Rockford Peaches. That was the mythical A League of Their Own. Rockford Peaches played their games at League Stadium down there. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, Grace is 8-3 in
Hmm.
NAIA. Bethel, Taylor have won 7 games. Those teams are pretty hot, but I kind of buried the lead a little bit going back to D3. Rose Hulman, they beat LaGrange.
Hmm.
They lost the first 2 games, beat LaGrange. LaGrange number 3 in the country. They
Wow.
beat them today. So that's a big win for the fighting engineers.
And only the second year for that, or second full year, I guess. He came in 2021, I think it was. Who's the coach there at Rose Holman? I'm trying to remember his name. My college, I'm stumping myself, but yeah, Rose Holman. I think it's the third year for that coach. My brothers played baseball there, alumni at Rose Holman, the Fighting Engineers. Yeah, so the D3, that's Indiana teams in D3 are definitely outplaying the D1 teams in Indiana so far. Go ahead.
Well, these teams go down south and play some pretty big stout competitions. So
And tell us about
they get
you've got your full college roundup that comes out on Monday mornings. Is that correct?
That's right. I try to post it by before noon. So you know, um, all the records, all the scores from the past week, some highlights, and you can. There's links to all the sites, so you can get more in depth that way, if you want.
Well, I know with what are 39 now, I believe, full collegiate programs in Indiana now that IUPUC joined the scene.
Right,
There are
39. There's 10 in D1.
right. We added a D1 and we added an NAI. Well, we added a D1 at the sacrifice of a D2 because USI Southern Indiana went from D2 to D1, and then IUPUC their first
Right,
year, and
there's
they're not
15.
officially
There's
NAIA yet.
15 teams in NAI, so that's
Yep.
the biggest representation.
And I don't is IUPUC officially an NAIA at this point? I know they're trying to get into the conference, but I mean
Yeah, they have to have a little probationary things, but yeah, they're in
okay.
NAIA program.
Be sure to watch for Steve's article that comes out Monday morning. It's his complete college roundup. I know last year we spent a lot of time on college. We could almost have a full hour show just on the college roundup. That's why we really, big fans like me look forward to that weekly college roundup every week that you put out on Monday. Any final thoughts on college before we pass it over to DeLaCoach?
I don't think so.
Moving right along, and we're back with Mark DeLaGarza for our weekly segment on DeLaCoach's Corner, we call it. Of course, Mark DeLaGarza is a longtime coach with the Summit City Sluggers up there in Fort Wayne. And I love these little segments. We film them all over the summer, and they're just little, 2-minute segments that are just really clever, neat ideas. And he's got a good one today as it's a creative little fielding drill. Let's give it a listen.
Today's episode is about fielding the ball out in front of you, and I have a neat drill that I like to use to give players a good feel for how to get in their legs and how to work from the ground up. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll you guys ground balls. What you're going to do, take your hat off, put it in your mouth. Okay, with the hat in their mouth, it will force them to have to see the ball out in front. Too many infielders make the mistake of fielding the ball down in between their legs. Okay, and that obviously we know isn't the best way to field. So to train yourself to field the ball out in front of you, I'm going to have each player put their hat in their mouth, and that way they can't see the ball right down here. They have to look out in front. I really want you just to feel the ball with your glove hand. Don't worry about your throwing hand. Field it, pick it up, toss it over to first base. I don't need a high energy throw right now. I'm just working your feet, your glove, and where your eyes are. Okay, so here we go. Couple more. Right at you. Good feet. There you go. There you go. Good hands. Stay in your legs. Glove open. Feel the ball in the palm of your glove, not in the web. The web is always kind of a backup. All right, a couple more. Okay, that again, this is the hat drill. I guess Hardy's a hat drill. Okay, where you put your hat in your mouth to force your eyes to look out in front of you and feel the ball out in front of you.
I want to say that there was no paid promotion in that little segment there, and I'm happy to report that no hats were hurt in the filming of this week's DeLaCoach's Corner. Appreciate it, Mark. Always good stuff. Moving right along, let's go to Where Are They Now? And before we get to our pros, let's keep in high school a little bit. First of all, got to mention this. If you guys follow Max Preps like all of us do, make sure you catch this article that was put out by Max Preps earlier last week. It's a great article on Max Clark and Keegan Rothrock. We've got the #1 high school baseball player in the country and the #1 softball player in the country right here in Indiana this year. They were a little bit inaccurate in one part of the article, but it was a fantastic article. I want to say that at the outright. They were a little bit inaccurate in that they said the highest draft pick was #2 out of Kokomo. And Steve, I'm trying to think of his name. Who's the brothers? One of them was #2 out of Kokomo.
Tom and Pat Underwood?
Yes, it was Pat. It was Pat Underwood from Kokomo, who was a #2 draft, but they missed a couple people that I'm trying to think of it here in a second. I'll get back to you on who that was. Matter of fact, let's look at it right now on who was that.
Of course, Brian Bullington of Madison and Ball State was the #1 overall
Yes,
pick.
that was who I was looking for, and Andy Bennis was the other. Now, they were both #1, but Andy Bennis, I think Andy Bennis was born in Colorado, even though he went to high school here, so that's why they probably missed it. But otherwise, fantastic article. I'm not taking anything away from the article. Make sure you catch it because something special, for a company called Baseball Across Indiana, this is why we're doing this. We've got some
Right,
fantastic
and
talent.
Franklin Community and Ron Colley are like 17 miles apart. They're
Right.
like on the south side of Indianapolis.
So yeah, you've got, and that's, the title of the article. Only 17 miles separates baseball, softball phenoms Maxwell Clark. Is he related to Max Clark? I've never. And Keegan Rothrock of Roncalli. Say that 5 times fast. So we had to throw that in there for where are they now, because those are a couple people you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on this year. I had to throw this out here real quick. This picture right here. Who is this picture? There's no Indiana ties, but this is just fun. This picture, of course, is the greatest power hitter in baseball history, posing for a photo with Mike Trout. I got to give a shout out to my buddy Kevin Ham on Facebook, who posted this, and I said, all right, I got to put that on tonight's show. So we got to have fun with that. Going to the serious side of where are they now, and Steve, I'll pass things over to you. Where are they now? Our first one has some Brebeuf and Butler ties. Tell us, where are they now, Steve?
Radley Haddad, he's a Brebeuf, that's easy for me to say. Butler grad, was with the Yankees, and now he's game planning and strategy coach for the Pirates.
We've got a general kind of a theme going on this week. These are kind of obscure coaching or administrative roles. These are, not the base coach or anything straightforward like that. This is obscure coaching as well as administrative roles in player organizations. Yeah, you mentioned he was with the Yankees. He was a bullpen catcher with the Yankees there for a while. I think he was drafted back in 2013. So that was Radley Haddad. And we're not going to the same team this week. Moving right along, who we got next, Steve-O?
Mentioned Don Mattingly. I think we need to mention Don Mattingly every week. We'll figure out some way to. One of Don Mattingly's sons is Preston. Preston Mattingly, who went to Evansville Central, is now the director of player development for the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, this is so that's, I think, the fourth time we've mentioned Don Mattingly in 2 shows. Speaking of Yankees,
Tim Lentic, he's a Mishawaka Marion grad. He's been on the medical staff with the Yankees for a long time, and now he's the head trainer.
yeah, he's I do Google
His
search.
dad was the coach at Mishawaka Marion. He since passed away, Ray Lentic. He was on the Notre Dame staff back I think when Pat Murphy was the coach there.
Got to give a shout out to Mishawaka Marion too. You got to love that font. If it's an old English font, I'm on board with it. Moving right along, we got this guy was on our show last year, and you'll notice real quick, Steve, that I do not have a hat for Gary West yet. We're going to try to check that off the list.
Yeah, Gary Westside, the Hawk, LaTroy Hawkins, 21 years in the big leagues. He's in the Indiana Baseball Hall of Fame, and he started his pro career with the Twins, who was with the Fort Wayne Wizards at the time, and he's back with the Twins the last few years. He is the special assistant of baseball operations.
I think he's had that a couple years now, or 2 or 3 years now. He's had that title.
Yeah, so the baseball ops people, I mean, look at all the knowledge and ability and everything that he has and all the connections.
Yeah, he's a baseball lifer, that guy right there, for sure.
Absolutely.
Big fan of his. Moving on to our final. Where are they now?
This is Northwest Indiana as well. Devin DeYoung, he's a Lake Central grad. He's had different positions in baseball and in the Chicago White Sox organization, and he is now hitting initiatives coach. So it'd be interesting to talk to him about that.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I think you've done an article on him before. Maybe is that correct?
Yes.
I'm the hitting initiatives coach. I'm going to have to reach out to him. I talked to him a little bit regarding something you're going to talk about here in a second, but I'd like a deeper dive into what a hitting initiatives coach is. Devin, I know you're listening in. Let's reach out, because I want to get you on the IHSBCA podcast, and let's talk about hitting initiatives coach. But there was another reason that you wanted to kind of follow up with Devin DeYoung. He was a friend of someone you want to talk about.
Right. Baseball's lost a beloved figure, Matt Poberico. I learned it early this morning. The pitcher died Saturday. He was only 31. He was a 2010 graduate of Hammond Bishop Knoll. He played 2 seasons at South Suburban College in South Holland, Illinois. And then he was at Kentucky Wesleyan, which is in Owensboro, for 3 years. He pitched and coached for the Northwest Indiana Oilmen. He signed as an undrafted free agent with the Arizona Diamondbacks in 17. That same year, he played in the Arizona Fall League. He pitched for the Diamondbacks, Mets at AAA, and also in the Marlins systems. He pitched a lot in independent ball. He had 38 saves for Sioux City between 19 and 21. The 20 season was taken away by COVID. More recently, he pitched for teams in Mexico and South America. He was in the 2023 Caribbean Series early this month. He started a game against Curacao. In Gasave, where he played for the El Gangaderos, the Arco Pacific League, he was called the King of Punch. Devin Young called him his best friend. Here's a statement from Devin. Pobes was the epitome of self-made success. Willingness to do what it takes more than anyone I've ever met. He was absolutely hilarious and a killer in the moment. He was brash, the most confident, would win every smack talk session. You loved being around him. He had maximum baseball feel. He gave back to the baseball community and helped so many young pitchers. He was well loved by all, but I loved him the most. He went from absolute ground zero to the top together. The climb was never going to end, constant growth. The hours and hours we would spend working on his craft are moments that shaped me as a coach and a friend. These moments will live with me forever. He truly understood what performance was. Even more, he knew what being a loyal friend was. That guy supported me more than I supported him, which is hard to say. He had his natural ability to glue the people around him. He was culture. He made the rest of our group want to be like him. He challenged all of us. He was positive, fun, gritty, get it done, mentality, perform, have more fun. That's why me and him hit it off. He had an incredible career. He always surprised me with what he accomplished, and at the same time, he didn't. I knew what he was capable of. He did too. He was flat out better than everyone. I have zero doubt in my mind he would have become a big league all-star if he had gotten the opportunity. He shoved everywhere he went, and it played against the best in the world. He had the stuff, the moxie, the charisma, the killer mindset, the focus in the moment. He had it all. We were brothers, and I am so honored to say he was my best friend. He was always calling me. He was always there. He helped me so much when my mom passed away just because I heard his voice. He was a larger than life, impact human being. He will go unmatched.
You know, I want to thank Devin for providing that for us. I chatted with him real briefly before, just, because this is recent news. And I chatted with him just briefly before we got started here. And I really appreciate him giving us this information, because baseball people are a family. I always use the word baseball people. And especially because Matt's a region kid, and there's no tighter community in the state of Indiana than the region. Take just a quick moment of silence for Matt. Once again, I want to thank Devin for providing that to us, and heartfelt tip of the cap to the whole region up there. Moving right along with the BAI conversations. We talked to a lot of people this week. This is where Steve and I talk about some of the great interviews that we each had this week. Steve at the pen with IndianaRBI.com. Steve, tell us who you talked to this week and who you got coming up.
I got an article posted this week about Sean Stifler and how he's new Notre Dame head coach, and how he approaches offense and everything else that he does. Uh, Gage Stanifer, who's a Westfield grad, he's now with the Blue Jays. He's now at his first spring training camp. Left last week for that to talk about his baseball journey, including his mint green glove and his red glove and his blue glove and the other 11 gloves that he has.
Well, I tell you what, you
That was
mentioned
fun talking to him.
another Blue Jay right there. I think last week, because our Where Are They Now segment last week was all Blue Jays. And we didn't even include Stanifer in that list. So that was another one. Then I think Coach Vogt
Right, there's a
talked
lot
about
of
another one too.
yeah, a lot of Blue Jays,
Yeah.
a lot of Blue Jays. There's a pipeline there because a lot that has to do with Greg Vogt and Anthony Gomez, and Anthony Gomez is a good friend of at Puerto Rico too. So I saw so much outpouring, on Twitter, from the region, but in Mexico and all over baseball, and you'll see more and more of
Yeah.
that. Brendan Booby is the new coach, the head coach at Lanesville Swinging Eagles. He played on the runner-up in the. He didn't get to play in 17 because he was hurt, but he was on that team, so they won the state title. So and then he finished his career at IU Southeast.
Another great young high school coach in the mix here. We got a chance to talk to him, and that interview that we had at the IHSBCA conference will be coming up in a few weeks here at the high school baseball season preview show. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that article too. And like I said, we'll see him in a few weeks at our high school preview show.
That's right. I also talked to Gene Smith, who is the new head coach at Prairie Heights. Haven't posted that or finished that story, but I soon will. And Logan Winnie, who is the founder of Old Fort Baseball
Oh
Company.
yes,
He's a
I love
graphic
it.
designer in Fort Wayne. Young guy. He's 28 years old. He's big baseball fan. And he's a big fan of Fort Wayne, which is where he's from. And so that's another person that I talked to.
Yeah, Old Fort B-Ball CO. Old Fort.
Old Fort Baseball Company.
Yep, and their Twitter. They're a good Twitter follow.
Period.
I wanted to give them a shout out. Their Twitter is Old Fort B-Ball CO. Old Fort BBALLCO is their Twitter feed. Good follow there. I'm glad you got him. Anybody else you talked to this week? You only talked to about 20 a week, I think, don't you?
Yes, I did. I'm working on something I wanted to do the last few years. I just didn't make the connection, but I'm working on a story about club baseball in Indiana, and we have IU, Purdue, Notre Dame, and Ball State all have teams. And I talked to a couple of guys from a couple of those teams so far, and I got a couple others. I'm hoping to talk to in the next few days. So that's real interesting. Notre Dame won a big tournament last fall in Battle Creek, Michigan, and they're thinking they're going to have a good shot at going to the World Series, which is in Alton, Illinois. But they have to qualify, of course. But they're ranked like 16th, 17th in the preseason poll. So they do have polls for the National Club Baseball Association.
Oh, these young kids got it so good. If we had that when I was playing, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's another thing, and going to talk to a couple more college or high school coaches, probably college coaches too this week. But there's a couple things I got cooking.
We've got on the IHSBCA Conversations. That's the name of the podcast. One big thing I wanted to say first, I want to give a big thank you to Phil Klusner, and he set up the YouTube page. Yes, IHSBCA is now on YouTube. As a matter of fact, we've already preloaded with, we don't have all of the IHSBCA Conversations podcasts on there yet. We're kind of backfilling them, but we've got 5 or 6 of them on there already. And again, that's youtube.com/@IHSBCA. And again, a big shout out to Phil Klusner, who I've been working with to get those on YouTube. And I know Brian Abbott was a big fan of getting that done too. So we're excited about that. And the next episode of IHSBCA Conversations, a guy I actually talked to couple weeks ago is this guy right here. And man, this was fun. You know me, if it's got to be fun. So I reached out to Tyler Gillum. Who is he? He's the head coach for the Savannah Bananas. And you're thinking, okay, a coaching, why is the coach for Savannah Bananas on a podcast for coaches? Well, I wanted to title this show, it's called Coaching Outside the Box, but I wanted to just call it There's More, because there's so much more to Tyler Gillum than what you see on a Savannah Bananas game. You know, he's the coach in the cowboy boots if you look at the games, but he has some really cool coaching resources that he has provided the coaches infield playbook is how to create an infield plan, because this guy's an infield mind. He's really got a background with the infield, but he's got a bunch of different resources that we go over in the podcast, as well as coaching outside the box. What do I mean by that? Well, you want to make it fun. You want to think outside the box, because ultimately you're trying to sell your program. You got to sell it to the players. You got to sell it out to the fans. You got to sell it to the administrators, the people that sign the checks. You got to sell it to everybody. And of course, Savannah Bananas is a very far outside the box, but he really talks about things that can be implemented even at the high school level. Fantastic interview. You got to watch that. It's actually available right now on our YouTube channel, which I'll go on IHSBCA's YouTube channel, youtube.com/IHSBCA. And then, of course, I backfilled some of those other episodes. So if you missed the episode from last week, which had Coach Maloney from Ball State, the episode before that, which is a coach with Coach O'Neill at Danville, talked about his time at Brownsburg and coaching top prospects like Lance Lynn, Drew Storen, Tucker Barnhart. Before that, there's another great episode, one that I've said I wanted to get done for years. It was an interview with Coach Mattingly of Southridge, and we talked about that 2017 to 2021 string where he lost 2 heartbreak state finals and then finally won it after, had to lay out a year in 2020. They finally won it in 2021. Just a great sequence. And the topic was learning from loss. And it was a great segment too. All of those are available on the IHSBCA YouTube channel. Or if you're a podcast guy like Steve and I, then the Apple Podcast app, as well as Spotify. So you can basically find it anywhere. And that is this week's BAI Conversations at IndianaRBI.com, as well as the IHSBCA Conversations on those apps, as well as YouTube, like I mentioned. BAI on deck as we get close to wrapping things up. Steve, we're doing pretty good. Our goal was, try to get them around.
It, man.
I know. Our goal is to try to get our show every week to about 30 minutes, and we're only at 8:33 right now, so we're not doing too bad. Just wanted to remind everybody of a few things as we talk about what's on deck. Number one, Saturday Morning Live is coming up. I actually reached out to media this week, because this is not a Baseball Across Indiana thing as far as our company. This is a Baseball Across Indiana thing as far as the whole state. We're just trying to head it up. We're going to cover the baseball scene on Saturdays, and it's going to be a Saturday morning thing. What we envision by this is we're going to start it at like 7:30 in the morning, and we envision teams as they're getting their fields ready for Saturday morning games playing this over the loudspeakers. It's going to be similar to what we're all familiar with the college game day on Saturdays. That's the atmosphere I'm looking for. That is Saturday Morning Live, and we're going to start that the first Saturday of games for the high school season. The second one there, as you see, the BAI 2023, want to remind everybody of that. That is the hashtag for this year. We're talking, I want media, I want coaches, I want everybody to use this same hashtag. And let's all get on the same page for following the games updates. If you want to put the videos on there, every highlight you want that you put on Twitter or Facebook, make sure to tag it with BAI 2023, and it'll be one-stop shopping for fans, coaches, and media alike to follow all the great high school baseball and college baseball that's going to be happening in 2023. And of course, we're also going to have our BAI Game of the Week this year, and it's going to be mostly Saturdays, some Fridays in there, maybe a few other days, but we're picking one game a week, and we're going to try to make it a good one. as our game of the week kicks off this year. Then, of course, This Week in Baseball Across Indiana is what you're watching right now. That is some things coming up. I want to throw out another thing here real quick. Here's another Twitter hashtag I want you to follow. Indiana NSR. Indiana NSR. That stands for the National Scouting Report. The Midwest representative for them is a guy named Mark Gallion. And Mark, I call you Mark all the time. I never actually said your last name. I hope I didn't butcher that. Indiana NSR. Make sure you follow them on Twitter. I'm not going to go into it too deep right now. I just want to say make sure you follow them on Twitter. They have some really good things coming up. Speaking of coming up, we got some good college baseball games coming up this week. You've got IU versus Butler. I hit my forward here. Let me get back to the scene. IU versus Butler this Tuesday, and I believe that's that's in Bloomington. Is that right, Steve? IU versus Butler Tuesday. Ball State is going up against Purdue Fort Wayne. I believe that's going to be in Muncie. Ball State versus Purdue Fort Wayne. That's going to be Friday and Sunday. I can't remember, but it's not a Friday through Sunday. It's Friday and Sunday. Ball State has somebody in the middle there on the Saturday game. ISU is playing at Kentucky Friday through Sunday, and that'll be an interesting matchup because Evansville actually just played Kentucky. They lost 6-3, so it'll be interesting to see how ISU handles Kentucky with a series this coming weekend. And I'll tell you, Butler's got their hands full. They're at LSU this Friday, and then the Monday after tomorrow. So next Monday, Butler is playing at LSU. And speaking of those SEC schools, I got to mention Valpo real quick. Not on this list, but Valpo just swept Tennessee Martin, and not coming up this week, but next Tuesday. So the Tuesday after this coming Tuesday, they got a series where they start out with Mississippi State, then they go to Southern Mississippi. So the Mississippi State, then SMU. So they've got their hands full coming up. But I want to mention this too real quick. I don't have it on there, but USI, Southern Indiana. You know, Steve and I mentioned this is their first year going D1. They've got a nice series coming. They took 1 of 3 from Bellarmine this week. So they won 1 out of the 3 games. I got to mention Bellarmine though, because they're very well represented with Indiana kids. They've got Steve Thom from New Albany, Casey Sorg. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Casey. Floyd Central kid, Webster Walls from Clarksville, Charlie Reif, Shelbyville of Posey County kid. Then Connor Christopher of Jeffersonville, Joey Milto of Roncalli, Drew Burr of Austin, and Cody Medley of New Albany, all playing for Bellarmine. So, you know, keep them on your radar as you're going across, whether you're watching games on Hulu like I do or streaming online. Keep an eye out for Bellarmine because they are well represented in the with Indiana kids there. I got to tip my hat to Coach Chris Dominguez there for recruiting the Indiana kids. And that brings us to this week's final out, and we're passing things over to Steve. I did first week. Steve, it's up to you. Take us home with this week's BAI final out.
Every once in a while, I let my mind drift back to the summer of 1974. I was 9, and that was my first season in the minors at Mishawaka Little League. Dog and Suds was my team. The drive-in was close to the ballpark, as were most of the league sponsors. We donned green felt caps and green shirts with yellow sleeves and jeans. It wasn't until the second year on McKinley Lumber that we changed from wood bats to metal. Seemed like lead pipes to me. Win or lose, we got to sprint to the concession stand and were fascinated with how all the pop flavors tasted together. In 74, my big hit was being thwacked in the mouth by a follow-through swing from on-deck hitter Dave Orvis. I can still see his number 7, remember spitting teeth, and recall the steady diet of popsicles that followed. It didn't stop my love of baseball. Northside went away decades ago. There are houses there now, but I still go down memory lane and the summer where it all started for me. And that's the final out for February 26, 2023. Good night.
Folks, we'll see you next week. Tipping the cap to the region.